Hey art historians, this is your week 6 summary video. I'm going to go over quiz number 10 and 11, as well as the awesome discussion that we had this week, and I've got some reminders as well and some compliments to give from our writing assignment for this week, which was the Pompeii VR activity. So let's first start with our two quizzes. So quiz number 10 was on China part 2 and Korea. And there was a question that I just wanted to clarify here, which is, what is a Shakyamuni Buddha? So our answers are the mountain Buddha, earthly Buddha, universal Buddha, or the moon Buddha. And so when we think about first the universal Buddha, which is the third response, this is the Buddha after having reached nirvana, and this is also referred to as the Vairocana Buddha. Now, the earthly Buddha is the Buddha who has lived these many, many, many lives and has learned and escaped samsara, and this is our Shakyamuni Buddha. And so the Buddha does have these kind of two roles, a role of what the end goal should be in achieving in that sense of nirvana and praying and living a good life, and all the things that go along with Buddhism. And then we have our earthly Buddha, because we do need to still be inspired by the many lives that we're going to be living in our reincarnation phase in that samsara, that endless cycle. Of course, the purpose is to escape that cycle and reach nirvana, just like the original Buddha did. And so that's why the earthly Buddha was the correct response for that question in quiz number 10. And then when we look at quiz number 11, there was a question that asked which two artistic styles converge at Gandhara. And I thought this was a good opportunity to sort of explain how sometimes artistic styles have a couple of different names that they go by. And so at Gandhara, we have artistic styles converging, especially with more outside influence than we've seen in some of the other Hindu and Buddhist works. And these styles are the Greco-Roman style as well as Buddhist iconography. So whenever we think of Greco-Roman, that means Mediterranean. So right off the bat, your first two answer choices here are sounding more correct than anything else. We've got Mediterranean and Eastern European, and Mediterranean and South Asian. Now we also have Renaissance and South Asian, as well as Classical and Northern European. Now these two do not include that Mediterranean aspect, that Greco-Roman style. So right off the bat, we're crossing those off. And then we have our Buddhist iconography, which would be South Asian. And so that's why that answer was correct for that quiz. Moving right along to our discussion, excuse me. Oh my goodness, I cannot ditch this cough after the flu. It is everlasting. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about Hinduism. And so, Emily B., you had talked a little bit about the god of Shiva and how he's known as this cosmic dancer, taking a look at our rock-carved temple to him. You mentioned that this cave has multiple pillars, and it looks like they were carved from the rock and not brought into the cave. Now, first, I find Shiva to be just this most interesting god. I think it is so just well-balanced, which makes a lot of sense in the Hindu religion. Shiva is a character that has a lot of duality. And so he is this cosmic dancer, and as he is dancing, he is both destroying with fire and rebuilding. And so it makes this cyclical kind of rhythm that I find to be just, I don't know, it's very interesting. I like when things are not just black and white, but there's like a little bit of gray in there, you know? It's not that he's just the destroyer and he's just the creator. He actually does both, which I think makes him a little bit more dimensional and a little bit more relatable, just to us as human beings. You know, nothing is so black and white for us as well, and so I love that kind of in between here. And not to mention that this particular location is rock cut, so Emily, you were right, those columns were not brought from an exterior source and then placed into this particular temple. They were carved right out of the surrounding stone. And for me, first of all, I find any work of architecture more captivating than anything else, because I tried a hand at drafting in high school. It didn't go well once math got involved. I am so deathly allergic to math, folks. It is a real issue that I still deal with today. And so I had to abandon my architecture dreams. It was something my mom had suggested. When I realized how much math and numbers was in it, I was like, oh, I do really like drawing cool buildings, but I don't like calculating square distances, etc., etc. So anyway, I've always been absolutely amazed by works of architecture. This is why the Pantheon is one of my favorite buildings in the whole world, and why even the mention of it makes me almost want to start crying. So whenever we have a particular example like this, that's really even more amazing, because not only are you planning out a site, an architectural piece, a building, but it's also now part of the stone that you're carving it from. I mean, oh, just the vision to know that this is going to work correctly, to invest so much into carving everything that you see out of the mountain and the stone reminds me of something like the temple, the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, one of my other favorite works of architecture. It's really, really amazing, and this is the part of art history that I love, where you're just like, how did they do this? It is so cool, and so I love that. So great job there. Alex R., you had talked about with the the crown, the golden jade crown from the Silla Kingdom. You talked about how you love that each piece it seems to be of jade placed so expertly, not just for the object itself, but considering the person as well, and not even just the jade, but those hanging golden tendrils down the front of the face here, the facade of this crown. And you really thought that, you know, each piece of gold seems to have a story or a reason for being there. And I also find that beautiful, as you mentioned. Even though maybe the whole thing is a little overwhelming and gaudy, like you say. And our wonderful teaching intern, Teresa, had responded, and she mentioned that she also feels like every piece, every attachment was placed with such reverence, not just for the object, but for the person. And when we have these things being created for a specific person, there must be so much intention and so much thought behind each decision, and a story for why everything is there. And so I also agree that this piece most likely was even more effective when worn, as you do have those gold tendrils hanging down around the face, and even emphasizes that person more. And then Lily also talked a little bit the golden jade crown that we're talking about right now. And the thinness of it reminded you of Queen Punabi's headdress from the Royal Cemetery of Ur. And I love that connection to Ur. I've always wondered about the weight of this crown. This seems like something that I want to hold. Like, the thinness seems so thin, but then there's like a crud ton of jade attached and more gold. Like, it's so interesting. And I really think this is a great example of a work that most likely would give us a different impression in person. And so that's, folks, what's leading me to my next point of how important it is to see art in person. It's more impactful, it's more powerful, it's more humbling. You ever have a chance to travel and see, go, do, journey out into this world, because seeing things in person is irreplaceable. And though we do have these amazing experiences, like with our writing assignment for this week for the VR activity, it is a great alternative, but not the perfect replacement of seeing things in person. And so that leads me to some of my reminders that I wanted to talk to you briefly about. First, compliments all around for those that chose to complete writing assignment number 3, which is the Pompeii VR activity. I really love the reflections that you all did. I'm glad that you enjoyed this VR aspect. Of course, you know, our course itself is online, and, you know, I truly believe one of my most successful teaching tools is my pure love for this subject, and so trying to get that across from a distance can be difficult sometimes, and especially with the activities and experiences that you would have in a normal in-person classroom, getting those to be effective for a distance and online modality is important too. And so I love that you folks did such a great job on this. Great reflections. Many of you were very thrown off by the dirtiness and the yuckiness of Pompeii. I'm gonna be honest, I was there in December of 2024, and there actually is, instead of just crosswalks flat across the street for pedestrians, they actually have raised blocks that you would then step on to walk across, because people didn't want to get their feet all dirty from the muck and the filth and just, ugh. That book I just finished reading, it was called Cleopatra's Daughter by Michelle Moran, also described just the overall not great hygiene of ancient Rome, and I find it to be so distressing. I can't think about it too much. But anyway, great job, folks. I really loved reading all of your responses to that. Just wonderful job all around. Now, we are moving on to week 7. This is an important week, folks, so I really hope that you're watching these videos. I'm going to put this particular piece in my announcement in bold capital letters. Your formal writing assignment. Pausing. Need to do a part 2. Hold on, folks.